People usually finance a new vehicle over 5 or 6 years, but the true price of my charcoal gray pickup ended up being my entire family. My brother saw a fleet vehicle to exploit. My mother saw a leash to tighten. When I signed the papers, I thought I was buying transportation, not a declaration of war. It cost me every relationship I had ever known. But looking at the open road, I know I got a bargain. The rain in Ohio does not just fall. It hammers. It felt personal that night, beating against the windshield of my 10-year-old sedan as the engine sputtered, coughed, and finally died on the shoulder of Interstate 71. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, listening to the silence of the engine being swallowed by the roar of passing semi-trucks. I was 33 years old. I worked 2 jobs. I had just clawed my way out of a relationship that had drained my savings and my self-esteem. And now, I was stranded in the dark with a dead alternator and 12% battery on my phone. I knew who I had to call, and I knew exactly what it would cost me. The internal debate lasted 3 minutes. I could call a stranger, pay a towing fee I did not have, and sit in a damp cab with a man named Earl, or I could call my mother. Calling Lorraine Murphy was never just a request for a ride. It was a transaction. It was an admission that she was right, that I was failing, and that the independence I had fought for was just a cute little phase I was going through. I dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Gabriella?" she said, her voice sharp, alert. "It is past 10. My car died," I said, staring at the rain smearing the glass. "I am on the shoulder near the Medina exit. I do not feel safe waiting for AAA." There was a pause, a heavy silence where I could practically hear her lighting a cigarette. Satisfied. "Stay in the car," she said. "I will get Travis. We are coming." She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask what happened. She just activated the protocol, the Murphy Rescue Squad. 40 minutes later, high beams flooded my rearview mirror. A massive, lifted white pickup truck pulled up behind me, its hazard lights flashing like a landing strip. My brother, Travis, hopped out. He was 35, wearing a canvas jacket that looked cleaner than a work jacket should, with the logo of our family business, Crestline Property Services, embroidered on the chest. "Well, look at this," Travis shouted over the rain as I rolled down my window. He leaned in, smelling of pine air freshener and stale coffee. "Another one bites the dust. Gabby, just help me." "Travis," I said, grabbing my purse. "Mom is in the truck," he said, jerking his thumb back. I called my buddy Miller. "He is going to tow this scrap heap to the lot. Do not worry about it. I do not have cash for a private tow." I said. Travis waved a hand dismissively. "It is handled. Get in with Mom." I abandoned my car, feeling a pathetic sort of grief for it. It was a junker, but it was my junker. Climbing into the back seat of Travis's truck felt like surrendering. The cabin was warm, smelling of leather and my mother's perfume, a heavy floral scent that always made the air feel thin. Lorraine turned in the passenger seat. She looked immaculate, even at 11 at night. Her hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde defiance. "You look tired, Gabriella," she said. "I am tired. Mom, I worked a double." "And for what?" she asked. "To drive a car that leaves you on the side of the road?" Travis climbed in the driver's seat, shaking rain off his hair like a golden retriever. He revved the engine, a powerful, throaty sound that vibrated through the floorboards. "Miller is 10 minutes out," Travis said, checking his phone. "He will take it to the shop on 4th. We will deal with it in the morning." "Thank you," I said. "I really mean it. That is what family is for," Lorraine said, reaching back to pat my knee. Her hand felt heavy. "You try so hard to do everything yourself, Gabriella. It is painful to watch." The ride home was a lecture disguised as conversation. Lorraine listed the reasons why my life was unstable. My apartment was too small. My job at the logistics center was dead-end. My side hustle refinishing furniture was a hobby, not a career. By the time they dropped me off at my apartment complex, I felt 3 inches tall. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from my bank app, a charge for $250. I clicked it. Miller Towing Recovery. I froze. I had not given Miller my card. I had not even seen Miller. Then I remembered a month ago, when I had asked Travis to pick up some lumber for me because my car could not fit it. I had given him my card for the materials. He must have saved the number. I called him immediately. "Travis," I said, keeping my voice steady, "why is there a $250 charge on my card for the tow? You said it was handled." "It was handled," Travis said, sounding bored. "Miller came and got it. You said not to worry about it." I said, "I thought that meant you were covering it as a favor, or at least that you would ask me before running my card." "Gabby, come on," he said. "Miller runs a business. You expect him to work for free? I used the card on file to make it easy for you. You were stressed. I was helping. Helping is not spending my money without asking." I said, "That was my grocery budget for the next 2 weeks." "You are being dramatic," he said. "Look, Mom wants you to come for dinner tonight. Don't be sour. We are trying to help you get on your feet." He hung up before I could demand a refund. I went to the dinner because I always went to the dinner. It was the rent I paid for being a Murphy. The house I grew up in was a sprawling ranch style in a suburb that had been upscale in the 90s and was now just tired. Lorraine had set the table with the good china, which meant she wanted something. We ate pot roast in a silence that felt curated. Travis ate with aggressive enthusiasm, while Lorraine picked at her vegetables, watching me. "We have been talking," Lorraine said, setting down her fork. Travis nodded, wiping his mouth. "About your situation." "I do not have a situation," I said, cutting a potato. "I have a temporary transportation issue. You have a life issue." "Gabby," Travis said, "you are working yourself to death for hourly wages. You are smart. You are organized. Why are you still fighting us?" "I am not fighting you." I said, "I just want to do my own thing. Crestline is growing," Lorraine said. Her voice took on that smooth melodic quality she used when she was lying to a client about a completion date. "We landed a few small municipal jobs. We need someone in the office who isn't—" "Dahlia?" Travis supplied. "Dahlia is fine," Lorraine said, "but she is not family. She does not care about the legacy. We need you. Gabriella, we need someone to manage the schedules, handle the vendor contracts. It would stabilize you. Company car, salary, benefits." I looked at them. On paper, it sounded perfect, but I knew Crestline. It was a chaotic ecosystem of robbing Peters to pay Pauls, of corner cutting, of panic disguised as strategy. My father had built it, and when he died 4 years ago, Travis took the reins while Lorraine managed the books. Since then, it had become a black box. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I like my job. I like the independence." "Independence?" Travis laughed. A sharp bark of a sound. "You are driving a car that died on the highway. You are living in an apartment the size of this dining room. That is not independence. Gabby, that is struggle. It is my struggle," I said. Lorraine sighed. A long, tragic exhalation. "We are just trying to protect you. You are so stubborn, just like your father was at the end." The mention of my father silenced the room. They knew that was the button to press. "I need a car," I said, changing the subject. "The mechanic said the sedan isn't worth fixing. The transmission is shot too. So take a company loan," Travis said. "We can finance a vehicle through Crestline. You drive it, you work it off." I put my fork down. "No, no loans, no strings. I am going to buy something myself." Travis rolled his eyes, looking at Lorraine. "See? She chooses the hard way every time." I left dinner early, claiming a headache. As I walked to the Uber, I felt the familiar weight of their judgment. They wanted me in the fold not because they missed me, but because I was useful. I was the responsible one, the one who read the fine print. And if I worked for them, they would own me. I spent the next 3 days scouring the internet. I needed a truck, not for Crestline, but for me. I wanted to expand my furniture restoration business. I wanted to haul dressers and tables without begging Travis for help. I wanted to drive through a snowstorm without praying. I found it at a dealership 2 towns over, a charcoal gray mid-size pickup, 2 years old, low mileage, 0 accidents, It was not flashy. It did not have leather seats or a moonroof. It had cloth seats and a bed liner. It was practical. It was perfect. I went alone. I did not tell Lorraine. I did not tell Travis. The salesman was a man named David who looked tired of people wasting his time. When I told him I wanted to test drive the gray truck, he looked at my sensible shoes and my determined face and handed me the keys. The test drive was a revelation. The truck felt solid beneath me. It sat high off the ground. When I pressed the gas, it moved with authority. For the first time in months, I felt safe. I sat in the sterile cubicle with the finance manager, my heart hammering against my ribs. My credit was good. Not perfect, but good. I had worked hard to repair it after the breakup. When the manager slid the paper across the desk, showing the monthly payment, I did the math in my head. It would be tight. I would have to pick up 2 extra shifts a month. I would have to stop buying coffee out. But when I looked at the line for owner, and I imagined writing Gabriella Murphy and no one else, the anxiety vanished. I will take it, I said. I signed my name. The ink was black and permanent. There was no cosigner, no guarantor, just me, driving off the lot. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was a quiet, burning warmth. It was pride. I turned on the radio, rolled down the windows, and let the wind whip my hair. I had done it. I parked the truck in front of my apartment building, backing it into the spot so I could see the grill from my window. It looked strong. It looked like mine. The next morning was Saturday. I was in my pajamas, drinking coffee and just staring at the truck through the blinds. When a car pulled up, it was Lorraine. She had not called. She never called. I opened the door before she could knock. She was holding a white bakery box and a small gift bag. "Surprise?" she chirped, breeze blocking past me into the living room. She went straight to the window and peered out. "So, is that it?" News traveled fast. I had not posted it on social media yet. "Who told you?" I asked. "Travis has friends everywhere," she said vaguely. "It is practical. A bit masculine, but practical. I like it. Mom?" She set the bakery box on my small kitchen table. I brought donuts and a little housewarming gift for the truck. She handed me the gift bag. Inside was a heavy pewter keychain with a medal of Saint. "Christopher, protect us," it read. "And this," she said, handing me a laminated prayer card. "Put it in the glove box. You can never be too careful." "Thank you," I said. "That is sweet." She sat down, smoothing her skirt. She looked around my apartment with that familiar critical eye, noting the stack of mail on the counter, the dust on the baseboards. "So," she said casually, "Travis is worried about the insurance rates. Since you are under 25. I am 33. Mom, right. But still, truck insurance is high. We were thinking, if you want, we could add it to the Crestline fleet policy. It is a blanket policy. It would save you probably $100 a month." My internal alarm bells chimed. "No," I said. "I already secured insurance. It is done." Lorraine frowned. "Why throw money away? We are just trying to help. I appreciate it, but I want to keep my finances separate." She sighed, looking wounded. "Fine. Be that way. Oh, that reminds me. I need a copy of the registration and the title application, just for the family emergency file." I blinked. "The what?" "The emergency file," she said, as if I were slow. "I keep copies of everyone's important documents in the safe. Passports, titles, birth certificates. In case of a fire or if something happens to you. You know how scattered you can be. I am not scattered," I said, feeling my defenses rise. "And I have my own fireproof box." "Gabriella," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming stern. "Do not be difficult. If you get into an accident and you are in a coma, how am I supposed to handle your affairs if I do not have the information? I am your mother." It was a grim, manipulative hypothetical, and she delivered it with expert precision. "I do not have the title yet," I lied. "It is coming in the mail." "Well, give me the temporary registration and the bill of sale," she said, holding out a manicured hand. "I will just snap a picture with my phone. It will take 2 seconds." I hesitated. It seemed like such a small thing. A picture of a piece of paper, To refuse felt petty. To refuse felt like confirming I was the paranoid, ungrateful daughter she always implied I was. I left the folder in the truck. I said, "Go get it," she said, smiling. "I will wait. Have a donut." I walked out to the truck, the morning sun glaring off the new paint. I unlocked the door and grabbed the dealership envelope from the passenger seat. My hands were shaking slightly. Why did she make me feel like a child? Why was every interaction a test of loyalty? I walked back inside. Lorraine was standing by the counter, texting. She looked up and beamed. "There is my girl." I opened the envelope. "Here," I said, "but just a picture. I am keeping the originals." "Of course," she said. She took the papers. She held them up to the light, scanning them. Her eyes moved back and forth, reading the VIN, reading the purchase price, reading the lender information. She was not just photographing them. She was memorizing them. She pulled out her phone and snapped 2 photos. "Click, click, see?" she said, handing the papers back. "Painless. Now we are both safe." She stayed for 10 more minutes, criticizing my haircut and asking if I was dating anyone. Then she left. As she drove away, I felt a wave of exhaustion hit me. I locked the door and leaned against it. Later that afternoon, I met my cousin Marin for coffee. Marin was the black sheep of the family, mostly because she had moved to the other side of the city and refused to attend every single Sunday dinner. She worked in medical billing and had eyes that missed nothing. I showed her a picture of the truck on my phone. "It is beautiful." "Gabby," she said, "really, you look happy in the photo." "I am." I said, "It feels good to own something. Mom came by this morning." Though, Marin's smile faded slightly. "Oh? What did she want?" "She gave me a St. Christopher medal. And she wanted a copy of the paperwork for her emergency file." Marin set her coffee cup down slowly. The ceramic clinked against the saucer. "Did you give it to her?" Marin asked. "I let her take a picture. I didn't want to fight." Marin looked out the window, her jaw tight. "Gabby, you have to be careful." "What?" "It is just a registration. It is information," Marin said. "Information is currency to Aunt Lorraine." "You are sounding paranoid," I said, though a cold prickle of unease started at the base of my neck. "Am I?" Marin leaned in, lowering her voice. "Look, I have not said anything because I do not have proof, but after Uncle Mike died, things moved around." "What things?" "Assets," Marin said. "Dad told me that before Mike died. There was talk of a warehouse property, a lease your dad held, after the funeral. It just vanished from the estate inventory. Lorraine said the lease had expired. But Dad saw Travis driving a Crestline truck out of that lot 6 months later." "That does not mean anything," I said. Dad's business was messy. Marin looked at me, her eyes serious. "If you give them documents, they will use them. That is the rule. Just watch your credit, okay? And do not let Travis borrow that truck, not even for an hour." I drove home feeling unsettled. Marin had always been dramatic, but she was rarely wrong. By Monday, the weirdness began. It started with a Facebook comment from my Aunt Linda, who lived in Florida and whom I had not spoken to in 3 years. She commented on my profile picture, which was just a photo of me and my cat. "So proud of you, honey. Travis told us about the new company vehicle. Crestline is really taking off." I stared at the screen. "Company vehicle?" Then a text from my Uncle Sal. "Good luck with the new rig. Gab. Keep it between the ditches. Tell Travis I have that contact for the fleet discount if he needs it." My stomach twisted. I called Travis. "What are you telling people?" I asked. "What?" Travis answered, sounding distracted. There was the sound of a saw buzzing in the background. "Aunt Linda thinks my truck is a company vehicle. Uncle Sal is talking about fleet discounts." "Oh, that," Travis said. "I just mentioned you got a truck and that you might be helping out a bit more. They probably just assumed. You know how Linda is. She hears what she wants to hear. You called it our new workhorse to Sal, didn't you?" Travis laughed. "It is a figure of speech. Gabby, we are family. What is yours is ours, right? Look, I have to go. The inspector is here." He hung up. "What is yours is ours." I walked out to the parking lot to check on the truck. It was there, shiny, mine, but it felt different now. It felt like they had put their fingerprints on it without even touching it. I opened the door and sat in the driver's seat, needing to reassure myself. I opened the glove box to put the St. Christopher medal inside. I had thrown it on the passenger seat earlier. I reached for the dealership envelope to put the registration away properly. I opened the flap. I froze. When I bought the truck, the salesman, David, had handed me 2 key fobs. I had put one on my key ring. I had put the spare one inside the envelope, specifically so I would not lose it. I remembered sliding it in. I remembered the bulge it made in the paper. The envelope was flat. I dug my hand inside. Registration, bill of sale, warranty booklet, no key. My heart began to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I turned the envelope upside down and shook it. Nothing. I checked under the seats, between the console, in my purse. I called the dealership. David, this is Gabriella Murphy. I bought the gray pickup on Friday. Hey, Gabriella. Everything running smooth? Yes. But did you give me 2 keys? Or was it just one? David's voice was instant and professional. 2 keys. Standard delivery. I handed them to you myself. One on the ring, one in the packet. Are you sure? 100%? I logged both key codes in the system before you drove off. Why? Did you lose one already? No, I said, my voice sounding hollow. I must have misplaced it. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the empty passenger seat. I replayed the timeline. I brought the truck home Friday. I had the envelope. I had the spare key. Saturday morning. Lorraine came over. She asked for the paperwork. I went to the truck. I brought the envelope inside. I remembered her standing at the counter. Go get it. I will wait. Have a donut. I remembered walking out to the truck, leaving her alone in my apartment for, 60 seconds? 2 minutes? The envelope had been on the counter when I came back. Or had it? No. I had brought the envelope in from the truck. She did not have access to it before then. Wait. When I handed her the papers, she held the envelope. She took the papers out. She held the whole packet while she was taking pictures. She was moving things around, shuffling the documents, just for a second. But why? Why would my mother steal a spare key to my truck? It made no sense. It was insane. It was the kind of paranoia Marin talked about, but the key was gone. I sat in the truck for a long time. The new car smell, which had been so intoxicating 2 days ago, now smelled like chemicals and deception. I drove to an auto parts store. I bought the club, one of those bright red steering wheel locks. It felt ridiculous to put it on a truck parked in a safe neighborhood, but I did it anyway. I locked the bar across the wheel. Then, feeling like a spy in a bad movie, I bought a small Apple AirTag. I hid it deep under the back seat, tucked into a slit in the fabric where no one would find it unless they were tearing the truck apart. I went back up to my apartment. I felt sick. I felt guilty for suspecting them, and stupid for not suspecting them sooner. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a text from a number I did not recognize. Nice truck. Hope you can afford it. I stared at the words. They were simple, but they carried a weight that made the hair on my arms stand up. It wasn't a congratulations. It was a taunt. I typed back, "Who is this?" The 3 dots appeared, danced for a moment, and then vanished. No reply. I looked out the window at my truck. The red bar of the steering lock, visible through the glass. The rain started again, hammering against the window, washing away the dust. But it could not wash away the feeling that I had just invited something terrible into my life. I had bought a truck to get away. But as the darkness settled over the parking lot, I realized I had just given them a new way to find me. The Tuesday morning sun was weak and watery, filtering through my blinds with a gray persistence that made the dust motes in my apartment dance. I held my coffee cup with both hands, the ceramic warm against my palms, and walked to the window to do what I had done every morning for the last 5 days. Admire my truck. It was my anchor. It was the physical proof that I was an adult, that I was solvent, and that I could take care of myself. I pulled the cord to lift the blinds, expecting to see that charcoal gray shine, the solid stance of the tires on the asphalt. My coffee cup slipped from my hands. It hit the floor with a wet, heavy thud, splashing hot liquid over my bare feet, but I did not feel the burn. The parking spot was empty. For a second, my brain refused to process the visual data. I blinked, thinking I had parked in a different spot. I scanned the row. The rusted Honda Civic was there. The blue minivan was there. My spot, number 4B, was a rectangle of oil-stained emptiness. I ran out the door without shoes, my socks soaking up the damp concrete of the breezeway. I stood in the empty spot, spinning in a circle, my breath coming in shallow. Panicked gasps. There was a pile of glass near the curb, shattered safety glass, and lying in the mulch of the flower bed, tossed like garbage, was the red steel bar of my steering wheel lock. It had been cut clean through with an angle grinder. Someone had not just stolen my truck. They had hunted it. I ran back inside, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I dialed 911. 911. What is your emergency? My truck. I gasped. My truck was stolen. I am at the Greystone Apartments on 4th. I spent the next hour in a haze of adrenaline and nausea. A patrol car arrived, and I gave my statement to a young officer who looked bored. I gave him the VIN, the license plate number, the description. I told him about the tracker I had installed, but when I opened the app on my phone, the screen simply said, "Location not found." They had found it. They had disabled it. I sat on my couch after the officer left, staring at the wall, feeling a profound sense of violation. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was my escape route. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was the sheriff's department. Ms. Murphy? It was a different voice this time. A deputy. Yes? Did you find it? We located the vehicle, ma'am, the deputy said, but I am a little confused. You reported this as a theft? Yes. It was stolen. Where is it? It is parked at a construction site off Route 9, the Ridgehaven Municipal Project. The officer on site says the vehicle has a magnetic sign on the door for Crestline Property Services. My blood ran cold. Excuse me? I whispered. The vehicle is marked as a fleet truck. The deputy continued, his voice losing its sympathy and gaining a hard edge of suspicion. The foreman on site, a Mr. Travis Murphy, stated he had the keys and that this was a company vehicle. He says there was a miscommunication. I felt the room tilt. He has the keys? He produced a key. Yes, ma'am. Filing a false police report is a misdemeanor. If this is a civil dispute between family members about business assets, you need to handle it in civil court. Do not use the patrol division as your leverage. No, I stammered. It is in my name. I am the sole owner. He stole it. The deputy sighed. He has the key. Ma'am, the truck is marked with the company logo, and he is your brother. We are closing the report. If you want to retrieve the vehicle, I suggest you call him. The line went dead. I sat there, the silence of the apartment deafening. They had not just taken the truck, they had branded it. A magnet. They had slapped a magnet on the door like it was theirs. I dialed Travis. He picked up on the first ring, and the background noise was a symphony of heavy machinery and shouting men. Hey, Gabby, he said, his voice breezy and completely unbothered. You stole my truck, I said. My voice was low, trembling with a rage I had never felt before. Whoa, relax, he said. Stole is a heavy word. I borrowed it. You cut the steering wheel lock. Travis, you disabled the tracker. That is not borrowing. I lost the key you gave Mom. Okay? Travis said, sounding annoyed that he had to explain this. And I needed to move it this morning before you were up. We had an emergency at the Ridgehaven site. My dually is in the shop, and I needed to haul the generator. I knew you wouldn't mind helping the family out for one day. You put a Crestline magnet on it. I screamed. The police called me. Travis, they threatened to arrest me for filing a false report because you told them it was a company truck. Travis let out a sharp, mocking laugh. You called the cops? Jesus. Gabby, that is hysterical. You called the cops on your own brother? Bring it back. I said, bring it back right now. I can't. He said, it is blocked in by the cement mixer. I will bring it back tonight. Stop being so dramatic, It is just a truck. It is earning its keep." He hung up. 10 minutes later, Lorraine called. I answered, ready to fight. But she beat me to the punch. "I cannot believe you," she hissed. Her voice was trembling, not with fear, but with that weaponized disappointment she wielded like a scalpel. "Travis just called me. He is humiliated. Gabriella, the police showed up at his job site? In front of the municipal inspectors? He stole my truck. Mom, he borrowed it," she yelled. "He is your brother. He is trying to build a future for this family, and you are trying to tear it down because you are selfish. Do you know what it looks like to have the police investigate a contractor on a city job? You could have cost us the contract. He cut the lock off my steering wheel because you locked it like a paranoid lunatic," she countered. "If you had just given him a key like a normal sister, he wouldn't have had to improvise. He needed help. We are family. We share." "I am not part of Crestline," I said, tears of frustration hot in my eyes. "You are a Murphy," she shouted. "That means you are part of it whether you like it or not. Now, you are going to text Travis and apologize for causing a scene. He is stressed enough without you playing the victim." "Apologize?" I choked out. "Yes, before he decides not to fix the scratch he put on the bumper." She hung up. I stood in the middle of my living room, my phone in my hand. I felt small. I felt crazy. That was their magic trick. They could take a sledgehammer to my life and convince me I was the one holding the handle. I texted Travis, "Just bring it back tonight. Please." It was the most I could muster. It was a surrender. I needed to see it. I needed to understand what was happening. I couldn't go to the job site. Travis would cause a scene in front of the crew. But I could go to the office. I needed to see if there was any paper trail of this madness. The Crestline Property Services office was located in an industrial park on the south side of town. It was not a real office. It was a converted storage suite. A metal roll-up door covered the bay, and a glass pedestrian door led to a cramped front room that smelled of stale coffee, drywall dust, and lemon pledge. I walked in at 2 in the afternoon. Dahlia Vance was sitting behind the laminate desk that served as the reception area. Dahlia was a quiet woman in her 50s with dyed red hair and a nervous habit of chewing on her pen caps. She had worked for my father for 20 years. "Gabriella?" she said, looking up, startled. Her eyes darted to the closed door of Travis's office, then back to me. "What are you doing here? I need to see the vehicle logs." "Dahlia," I said, walking past the desk, "you can't be back here." "Gabby," Travis said. I don't care what Travis said. I walked to the filing cabinet where the active job folders were kept. I pulled the drawer open. It screeched on its tracks. "Gabriella, please," Dahlia whispered. Standing up, I flipped through the files until I found the fleet management binder. I opened it. There were lists of the heavy equipment, the excavators, the dump trailers, and then, on a fresh sheet of paper, typed in bold letters, light-duty transport, underneath, listed as Vehicle 04, 2025, Chevy Colorado, gray, owner, Gabriella Murphy, Crestline Fleet. I stared at the words, owner, not just driver. They had listed me as a fleet owner. I turned the page. There was an invoice from a fuel depot, charged to the company account, listing my truck's license plate. There was an invoice for vehicle maintenance oil filter, dated 2 days ago. I hadn't changed the oil. It was brand new. They were billing maintenance to the company for a truck I had possessed for less than a week. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Dahlia. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the door, ensuring we were alone. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a yellow sticky note. She pressed it into my hand, her fingers cold and trembling. "Check your credit report," she whispered. "What? Just do it," she hissed. "And don't tell them I told you." She walked back to her desk and started typing loudly as the back door opened and one of the foremen walked in. I shoved the note into my pocket and walked out, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I drove my rental car, a compact sedan I had been forced to pay for that morning, to a park 2 miles away. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled out my phone. I had a credit monitoring app, but I rarely checked it. I opened it now. The wheel spun. Loading. Loading. The score popped up. It had dropped 40 points. I scrolled down to open accounts. There it was. Bridgeton Community Credit Union. Type: revolving line of credit. Status: open. Opened 3 days ago. Balance: $4,250. I stared at the number, $4,000. In 3 days. I clicked on the transaction history. Timberline Supply, $1,800. Marathon Fuel, $300. Ace Hardware, $600. Crestline Internal Transfer, $1,500. I felt bile rise in my throat. They hadn't just stolen the truck. They had stolen my name. They had opened a line of credit to maintain the truck and were using it to funnel money into the business. I drove straight to Bridgeton Community Credit Union. It was a small, local bank where my parents had banked for 30 years. I walked in, my face pale, my hands clenched into fists. I need to speak to a manager. I told the teller, now. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a plush chair across from a woman named Mrs. Higgins. She looked kind, grandmotherly. I didn't open this account, I said, sliding my phone across the desk to show her the app. This is fraud. Mrs. Higgins frowned and tapped on her keyboard. She adjusted her glasses. Well, Ms. Murphy, everything looks in order here. The application was submitted online 3 days ago. It used your social security number, your date of birth, and it passed the identity verification questions. What questions? I demanded. She looked at the screen. Mother's maiden name. Name of your first pet. The high school you graduated from. I closed my eyes. Buster. My golden retriever. We got him when I was 6. Travis knew the name. Lorraine knew the name. The questions were designed to stop strangers, not family. And the address? I asked. 104 Maple Street. She read, That is my mother's house. I said, I haven't lived there in 10 years. My driver's license has my current address. Did anyone check that? For online applications with existing customer relationships, the system is more flexible, she said. And since you are a guarantor on the Crestline business account, I froze. I am a what? Mrs. Higgins looked confused. You are a guarantor. On the main business line for Crestline, your name has been on the file for years. Since your father passed, I stood up. The room was spinning. I am not a guarantor. I never signed anything. Ms. Murphy, please lower your voice, she said, looking alarmed. If you are claiming fraud, we can open an investigation. But I have to warn you, if this is a family business dispute, the police will not get involved. And if you flag this account as fraudulent, we will have to freeze all associated accounts, including your mother's personal checking and the business payroll account. She said it like a threat. Do you really want to bounce your brother's payroll checks? Freeze it, I said. Freeze it all. I walked out of the bank feeling like I was walking on a tightrope over a canyon. I called Lorraine. Why is there a credit line in my name? I asked the moment she answered. Oh, stop, she sighed. She sounded tired, like I was a toddler refusing to nap. It was a mix-up. Travis was trying to open a trade line for the truck expenses so you wouldn't have to pay for gas, and the bank system defaulted to your personal info because you are the title holder. We are going to pay it off next week when the Ridgehaven draw comes in. It is $4,000. Mom, materials, she said. We needed materials to start the job. It is an investment. Gabriella, you are getting worked up over nothing. It is a bridge loan. It will be zeroed out in 10 days. Do not cause drama. I hung up. Do not cause drama. That was the family motto. Translated, it meant, let us rob you in peace. I met Marin at a dive bar that night. I didn't drink, but I ordered a club soda and squeezed the lime until the rind broke. I told her everything, the truck, the magnet, the credit line, the guarantor status. Marin listened, her face grim. She didn't look surprised. It is exactly what I thought, she said, leaning in over the sticky table. What? I asked. When Uncle Mike died, he was in debt up to his eyeballs. Marin said, suppliers were threatening to put liens on the house. Lorraine was terrified she would lose the lifestyle. So, they moved things. Moved things how? They hid assets, Marin said, and they needed clean names to open new accounts. Travis had bad credit because of his divorce. Lorraine's credit was tied to your dad's mess. But you were the clean slate. You think they have been using my name since Dad died? Marin nodded. Why do you think the storage lot lease disappeared? Your dad had a lease on a commercial lot off I-90. He kept an equipment trailer there. A big one. Expensive. After the funeral, Lorraine swore it was returned to the leasing company, but I saw Travis hauling that trailer last week. It has a fresh coat of paint, but it is the same trailer. So they hid the trailer to keep the creditors from seizing it? And they likely put the lease in your name to keep it off the estate books. Marin said, Gabby, you are not just a sister to them, you are a shell company. I felt sick, a deep, heavy nausea that settled in my gut. What do I do? Document everything. Marin said, take screenshots, take photos. Do not tell them you know. If you spook them, they will shred everything. You need hard proof. And check your mail. If they used your name, the bills have to go somewhere. If they aren't coming to your apartment, they are going to Lorraine's. I went home and started a file. I took screenshots of the credit report. I wrote down the dates and times of every conversation. I felt like a detective investigating my own life. 2 days later, the mail arrived. Usually, it was just junk mail and bills. But this time, there was a thick envelope, certified mail. It had been forwarded from an old address, an address I had lived at briefly in college. It had taken months to find me. The return address was Harrow Pike Legal Group. I tore it open. Dear Ms. Murphy. Defaulted account. Valley Heavy Equipment Rentals. This letter serves as formal notice of default on the equipment lease agreement dated August 14th, 2021. As the personal guarantor of said agreement, you are jointly and severally liable for the outstanding balance of $28,400. Please find attached a copy of the executed guarantee. I flipped to the last page. There was a signature line. Guarantor, Gabriella Murphy. And there was my signature. It was my loop, my sharp G, the way I crossed my T's, but I had not signed it. In August of 2021, I was in Chicago for a friend's wedding. I was nowhere near Ohio. I held the paper up to the light. The ink looked uniform. It wasn't a photocopy of a signature. It was a pen stroke. Someone had practiced. Someone had sat down with a pen and learned to be me. The betrayal was so absolute it felt physical. This wasn't just money. This was identity. They had worn my skin to steel. I needed one more piece of the puzzle. The key. I drove to the dealership. I found David, the salesman who had sold me the truck. He looked happy to see me until he saw my face. David, I said, my voice flat. I need you to check the service logs. Did anyone call about a key for my truck? He frowned. Let me check the system notes. He typed for a moment, then stopped. Yeah, here it is. Last Saturday. A call came in from, well, it says customer. The notes say the customer asked about the procedure for reprogramming a spare key fob if one was found from a different vehicle. Reprogramming? I asked. Yeah, apparently. They had a blank fob and wanted to know if they could code it to the truck themselves. The tech told them no. They needed the master code. Did you give them the code? David looked uncomfortable. The note says the customer verified the VIN and the purchase date. The tech gave them the key sequence. It is usually just a series of ignition turns. Who was the customer? I asked. It says Gabriella Murphy. David said, What time was the call? 10:15 in the morning. I looked at my phone. Saturday, 10:15. That was exactly when I was outside, getting the registration from the truck for Lorraine. Lorraine had been in my apartment, alone, with my phone? No, I had my phone, but she had used her phone. She had called the dealership, pretending to be me. She had the VIN. She was holding the papers. She got the code. And Travis? Travis was a mechanic. If he had a blank GM key fob, which he probably did, given the fleet, and the code, he could program a key in 5 minutes. They had planned it. While I was eating a donut she bought me, She was stealing the digital access to my truck. I walked out of the dealership. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the pavement. I went to the hardware store. I bought a new deadbolt. I bought a heavy-duty padlock. I went home and changed my locks. I logged into every account I owned, email, bank, social media, and changed the passwords to random strings of characters that had nothing to do with my birthday or my pets. Then, I got in my rental car. I drove to my mother's house. I didn't call. I didn't text. I pulled up to the curb. The house looked warm, inviting. The lights were on in the living room. It was the picture of suburban peace. I walked up the driveway, but I didn't go to the front door. I walked around the side, through the gate that led to the backyard, and there it was, my truck. It was parked on the grass, next to the shed, but it wasn't the truck I had bought. The bed was filled, mounded high, with jagged concrete debris, rebar sticking out like rusted ribs. The tailgate was down and scratched deep, the gray paint gouged to the white metal underneath. The rear bumper was dented, caved in on the left side as if it had been backed into a pillar, and inside, I could see through the window, fast food wrappers on the dash, a hard hat thrown on the passenger seat, mud caked on the floor mats. In 5 days, they had aged it 5 years. They had treated it like a mule. I stood there in the dark, looking at the ruin of the one thing I had tried to keep for myself. I didn't cry. The tears were gone. Something else had taken their place. A cold, hard clarity. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a resource, a signature, a credit score, a vehicle. I took a picture of the truck. The flash illuminated the damage in stark, brutal detail. Then I turned around and walked back to the rental car. I didn't knock. I didn't scream. I had a war to plan. I walked through the back door of my mother's house without knocking. The lock on the kitchen door had been sticky for 20 years. You had to lift the handle and shove with your hip. I did it with a muscle memory that felt like a betrayal. Lorraine and Travis were in the kitchen. It was 8 in the morning. The air smelled of burnt toast and the specific, cloying scent of my mother's vanilla hazelnut coffee creamer. They looked up, frozen in a tableau of domestic normalcy that made my stomach turn. Travis was scrolling on his phone. Lorraine was buttering a bagel. "Where are the keys?" I asked. My voice was not loud. It was dead. Lorraine sighed, setting the knife down with a deliberate clatter. "Gabriella, do not start this again. We had a nice morning going. The keys, Mom, to my truck, the one parked in your backyard with a caved-in bumper and a bed full of concrete." Travis laughed. A short, sharp sound. He didn't look up from his phone. "It is not caved in. It is a dent. It is a work truck. Gabby, it adds character. It is not a work truck," I screamed. The sound tore out of my throat, raw and jagged. "It is my truck. I bought it. I pay for it. And you stole it." Lorraine stood up, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her face shifted instantly from annoyance to a practiced, wounded concern. "Stole?" she repeated softly. "That is such an ugly word. We needed it. Gabriella. For the family." Travis finally looked at me. His eyes were hard, devoid of the brotherly warmth he used when he wanted to borrow $20. "Look, the Ridgehaven contract required us to show a fleet of 4 reliable vehicles to pass the capacity audit. My dually is in the shop. The van is on its last legs. If we didn't show up with a fresh truck, we would have lost the bid. So you took mine? We utilized a family asset." Travis corrected. "Your credit is clean. Gabby, ours is tied up. Using your name helped everyone. We get the contract, the business makes money, and eventually, we pay you back for the wear and tear. Why do you have to be so selfish?" "Selfish?" I stared at him. "You opened a credit line in my name. You forged my signature on a guarantee. That is a felony." Travis waved a hand dismissively. "It is paperwork. It is how business gets done." I stepped forward. "I want the keys, now, or I'm walking out that door and calling the police. And this time, I will not tell them it is a civil dispute. I will tell them I have proof of identity theft." Lorraine slammed her hand onto the counter. "Do not you dare!" she hissed. Her face crumpled, her eyes filling with instant, weaponized tears. "After everything I have done for you?" I waited. I knew what was coming. "The ledger. I co-signed your first apartment," she cried, pointing a trembling finger at me. "When you were 22 and had no credit and that landlord wanted a double deposit? Who signed the paper? Gabriella? Who put her name on the line so you could have a roof over your head?" "That was 11 years ago." I said, "And I never missed a payment." "It does not matter," she shouted. "I took the risk. I carried you when you were nothing. And now, when your brother needs a little help, when your mother needs stability, you talk about police? You ungrateful little brat. I kept that lease. You know, I kept it in the safe. As proof that you are not as independent as you think you are. You owe us. You owe this family your loyalty until the day you die." I looked at her. I looked at the tears that stopped exactly at her lash line, never ruining her makeup. I looked at Travis, who was smirking because he thought Mom was winning, and I realized something. They didn't love me. They invested in me, and now they were cashing out. "Give me the keys," I said, "or I make the call." Travis rolled his eyes and dug into his pocket. He threw the key fob onto the table. It slid across the formica and hit the butter dish. "Take it," he spat. "The radiator is leaking anyway." I grabbed the key. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out the back door, got into my truck, and started the engine. It cranked with a heavy rattling shudder that hadn't been there a week ago. The check engine light was glowing a steady, angry orange on the dashboard. I drove away, leaving the concrete debris in the bed, leaving the heavy despair of that house behind me. But as I merged onto the main road, I knew this wasn't over. They hadn't apologized. They had justified, which meant they would do it again. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the office of Elena Ward. Elena was a consumer rights attorney recommended by a friend of a friend. Her office was in a strip mall, sandwiched between a chiropractor and a nail salon, but her suit was sharp, and her eyes were sharper. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back and tapped her pen against the desk. "Here's the reality. Gabriella," she said. Her voice was dry, devoid of sugarcoating. "You have a strong case for identity theft, the credit line, the unauthorized use of the vehicle, the potential forgery on the vendor guarantee. If this were a stranger, I would tell you we could have them in handcuffs by Friday. But," I asked, "but it is family," she said, "and the law gets messy when it crosses the dinner table. Prosecutors hate these cases. They call them civil matters because they know that 90% of the time, the victim gets guilt-tripped into dropping the charges right before trial. I won't drop them," I said. Elena looked at me over her glasses. "Maybe, but you need to understand the cost. If you file a formal affidavit of forgery, you are essentially handing the police a weapon to use against your mother and brother. If Crestline is as leveraged as it sounds, this investigation will topple the business. They will lose the house, they will lose the income, and they will blame you. Let them blame me." I said, "They are already blaming me for not letting them rob me." Elena nodded slowly. "Okay, if you want to fight, we fight, but we need to be surgical. We can't just scream fraud. We need to prove it. We need an audit trail that puts them in the room when the fraud happened." She slid a paper across the desk. "Start with the credit union. Demand the metadata for the online application. IP addresses, physical locations. If they submitted it from home, it is circumstantial. If they did it from a public computer, there might be cameras." She paused, her expression softening just a fraction. "Be prepared, Gabriella. When narcissists lose control, they do not retreat. They escalate. They will try to destroy your reputation to invalidate your testimony. They will come for your job, your friends, your sanity." I thought about the truck bed filled with concrete. I would rather be alone than owned. I said, I went straight from Elena's office to Bridgeton Community Credit Union. This time, I didn't ask for a manager. I handed the teller a formal letter Elena had drafted, citing the Fair Credit Reporting Act and demanding the transactional metadata for the account opening because I was the named account holder. They had to give it to me. 20 minutes later, a tech support specialist came out with a printout. The application was submitted at 4:15 p.m. on Tuesday. He said, "The IP address traces back to a commercial business. The print spot on Elm Street. I knew the place. It was 3 blocks from the Crestline office. I drove there. It was a small shop that smelled of toner and hot paper." The clerk was a young guy with gauges in his ears and a bored expression. I showed him a picture of Lorraine on my phone, a photo from last Christmas where she looked particularly wholesome. "Do you remember seeing this woman in here last Tuesday?" I asked. "Around 4 in the afternoon?" The clerk squinted at the screen. Then his face registered recognition. "Oh, yeah. The crying lady. Excuse me? Yeah. She was a wreck." He said, "She came in. Said she was trying to help her daughter with some loan paperwork for a house or something. Said her daughter was in the hospital and couldn't do it herself. She was crying, shaking. She couldn't figure out the scanner. She said her daughter was in the hospital?" I asked, my blood running cold. "Yeah. She asked me to help her upload the files. Driver's license, some tax thing. I felt bad for her. I pretty much clicked submit for her because her hands were shaking so bad." I stared at him. It was a performance, a masterclass in manipulation. She hadn't just stolen my identity. She had conscripted an innocent witness by playing the terrified mother. "Can you write that down?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Just write down that you helped her and what she told you. Please." The clerk looked at my face, saw the desperation there, and nodded. He grabbed a piece of company letterhead. I was sitting in my truck in the print spot parking lot, staring at the clerk's handwritten statement. When my phone buzzed, it was Kendra Sloan. Kendra was my ex-boyfriend's sister. We hadn't spoken in 6 months, not since the breakup. Seeing her name made me tense up, expecting some belated drama. "Hey, Gabby," random question. "Are you coming into money?" I stared at the text. "What?" I called her. "Kendra?" I said. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, hey," she said. "Look, I probably shouldn't be repeating this, but I was at the Gas and Go this morning, and your brother was there. He was talking to that guy Miller, the tow truck driver. And Travis was bragging, loudly. He said Crestline was about to get a major cash injection. He said, and I quote, 'My sister is finally good for something. The insurance payout is going to clear the books.'" I felt the phone slip slightly in my sweaty palm. Insurance payout? I don't have an insurance payout. "Kendra." That is what I thought. Kendra said, "But he made it sound like a done deal, like you were about to hand over a check. I just wanted to warn you." He sounded smug. I thanked her and hung up. My mind was racing. Insurance. Dad. My father had a life insurance policy, a small one. Lorraine had told us it barely covered the funeral. She said there was nothing left. I drove to my apartment. I still had boxes of old paperwork in the back of my closet. Things I had packed up from my dad's home office when we were clearing it out. Things Lorraine had told me to just get rid of. But I hadn't the heart to throw away. I dumped the box onto my living room floor. Old tax returns, receipts for lumber, manuals for power tools. I dug through it. Frantic, near the bottom, I found a stack of mail that had been bundled with a rubber band. It was mail that had arrived at my parents' house in the months after Dad died, addressed to me, which I had just scooped up and forgotten. I found it. An envelope from Prudential Life, unopened, postmarked 3 months after Dad's funeral. I tore it open. "Dear Ms. Murphy, this letter is to confirm the change of beneficiary request on policy number 8490. As per your instruction, your status as primary beneficiary has been waived in favor of the estate of Michael Murphy. Please find enclosed a copy of the notarized waiver." I unfolded the attachment. There it was, a document titled Waiver of Beneficial Interest, and at the bottom, Gabriella Murphy. The signature was shaky. It looked like someone trying to make their handwriting look different, but failing. It was the same loop. The same sharp G. My father hadn't left me nothing. He had left me the policy. He had tried to bypass Lorraine and Travis. He knew, even back then. He knew. And Lorraine, because she was the executor, had intercepted the mail. She had forged a waiver. She had funneled the money back into the estate. which meant back into her control. But Kendra said Travis was bragging about a payout now. I looked at the date on the letter. It was 4 years old. Why would Travis be talking about it today? Unless the waiver hadn't been processed correctly, or unless there was a second policy, or maybe the estate was finally settling, and they needed my signature again to release the final funds. I needed to talk to Dahlia. I waited until 5:30, when I knew Travis and Lorraine would be gone for the day. I pulled up to the Crestline office. Dahlia's Honda was still there. I walked in. Dahlia was packing up her purse. She jumped when the door chime rang. "Gabriella," she gasped. "You scared me. I need to know about the insurance." "Dahlia," I said. Dahlia's face went gray. She dropped her purse onto the desk. "I don't know what you mean." "Travis is telling people I am about to get a payout." I said, "I found a waiver from 4 years ago." "Dahlia, a waiver I didn't sign. Did they cash that policy?" Dahlia looked at the door, terrified. She walked around the desk and locked it. Then she turned to me, her voice a whisper. "They couldn't cash it." She said, "Why not?" "Because the insurance company flagged the waiver." She said, "The notary stamp? It was expired." Lorraine didn't notice. The company froze the assets pending a verification of signature. Lorraine was too scared to push it back then. So she let it sit. She told everyone the money was gone. "So the money is still there?" "Yes," Dahlia said. $50,000. "But that is not why Travis is bragging." "Then why?" "Because of the Ridgehaven contract," she said. She was shaking now. "To get the municipal bond, Crestline has to show a certain amount of liquid cash reserves. They don't have it, so Travis dug up the old policy file. What is he planning to do?" "Dahlia, he told me to prepare a claimant affidavit," she whispered. "He is going to resubmit the claim. He is going to forge your signature again, get a new notary stamp from one of his buddies, and cash it out to fund the bond. He thinks since it has been 4 years, the insurance company won't look as closely." My knees felt weak. I sat down in the client chair. $50,000. My father had tried to leave me $50,000, enough to pay off my student loans, enough to start my business for real. And they had let it sit in a frozen account for 4 years rather than let me have it. "There is one more thing," Dahlia said. She opened her drawer and pulled out a file. It was marked G. Murphy. "Do not file. Travis is panicking," she said. "Why?" "The Ridgehaven contract," she said. "It is a government job. It requires a level 2 background check on all principals and guarantors of the contracting company. So, I have a clean record." "Exactly," Dahlia said. "That is why they used you. But the background check? It includes a financial interview. An investigator is going to call you." "Gabriella, they are going to ask you to verify your assets and your role in the company." I stared at her. "If you tell them you aren't an owner," Dahlia said, "the contract is void. They lose the job. They lose the deposit. They get blacklisted from city work. Travis knows this. He realized it yesterday." She said, "That is why he borrowed the truck. He wanted to make it look like you were involved, like you were part of the operations. He thinks if he puts enough pressure on you, you will just say yes to the investigator to save the family." I stood up. I took the file from her hand. "He is wrong," I said. "I left the office. I didn't go home. I didn't feel safe there." Lorraine had a key to my apartment. I had given her one years ago, for emergencies, and I hadn't changed that lock yet. I couldn't risk waking up to her standing over my bed. I drove to a 24-hour supermarket on the edge of town. I parked my battered truck in the back of the lot. Under the yellow glow of a street lamp, I locked the doors. I climbed into the back seat. It smelled of wet concrete and old mud. A smell that should have been alien, but now felt like the scent of my reality. I pulled out my phone. I opened my voice memos. I had started recording my conversations with Lorraine a week ago, on Marin's advice. I pressed play on the one from the morning after I bought the truck. Lorraine's voice, tinny and sweet. "I just need a copy of the paperwork, in case of emergency. I am your mother." I skipped to the one from the confrontation this morning. Lorraine's voice, shrill and venomous. I co-signed your apartment. You owe us. You owe this family your loyalty until the day you die. I listened to it over and over. I needed to hear the hate. I needed to burn away the last lingering threads of guilt that told me I was being dramatic. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a guarantor. I wrapped my coat around me as a blanket. I watched the shoppers come and go. Normal people buying milk and bread, living lives where their mothers didn't steal their names. I wasn't going to seek revenge. Revenge was emotional. Revenge was slashing tires or screaming matches. I wanted justice. I wanted the ink to dry on the truth. My phone pinged with an email notification. I looked at the screen. It was an automated message. From Ridgehaven Municipal Facilities, Vendor Portal, to Gabriella Murphy, Owner, Guarantor, Crestline Property Services. Subject, Contract Approval Compliance Meeting. Dear Ms. Murphy, congratulations. Crestline Property Services has been tentatively approved for the North Sector renovation project. As a listed principal, your attendance is required at the mandatory contractor compliance meeting on Thursday at 9 a.m. Please confirm your receipt of this notice. I stared at the screen. My name was on the contract. Officially. Travis thought this was his victory. He thought that by putting my name on the dotted line, he had trapped me. He thought I would be too scared to blow up the deal. He had forgotten one thing. If I was the owner, I didn't just have liabilities, I had power. I hit reply. Confirmed. I typed, I will be there. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. The truck was cold, and the seat was hard. But for the first time in days, I slept, and I didn't dream of running. I dreamed of arriving. The conference room at the Ridgehaven Municipal Building smelled of floor wax and stale ambition. It was 9 a.m. on a Thursday, and the room was filled with men in polo shirts embroidered with company logos. Plumbers, electricians, pavers. They held travel mugs and joked with the easy familiarity of people who knew the game. I stood in the doorway, wearing a blazer I had bought at a thrift store the day before and holding a leather portfolio that contained nothing but a notepad and my terrifying resolve. Travis was already there. He was standing near the head of the table, laughing at something a guy from the water department had said. Travis looked the part of the successful contractor. He was clean-shaven, wearing a crisp Crestline shirt, exuding that specific Murphy charm that made people want to believe him. He looked like he owned the room. Then he saw me. His laugh died in his throat. It was like watching a power cord get yanked from a wall. His face went slack, then pale, then flushed with a sudden, sharp panic. He took a half-step toward me, his hands twitching at his sides. "Gabby," he hissed, keeping his voice low as I walked past him. "What are you doing here? Go home." I ignored him. I walked to the sign-in sheet on the podium. The compliance officer, a man named Mason Keir, who looked like he had been auditing spreadsheets since birth, glanced up. "Name and company?" he asked. "Gabriella Murphy," I said clearly, my voice carrying in the sudden silence of the room. "I am here representing Crestline Property Services. I believe I am listed as the primary guarantor." The room went quiet. In this world, the guarantor was the money. The guarantor was the boss. Travis made a sound like a strangled cat. "She is just the office manager," he said quickly, forcing a smile that looked more like a rictus of pain. "She is confused. She does not need to be here." Mason Keir looked at his clipboard, then at me, then at Travis. He ran a finger down a column. "Actually, Mr. Murphy, her name is on the bond application as the controlling principal," he said. "Have a seat. Ms. Murphy, we are just getting started." I sat down. Travis stood there for a second, vibrating with rage, before sinking into the chair opposite me. He spent the next hour shooting daggers at me with his eyes, texting furiously under the table, no doubt updating Lorraine on the catastrophe. I didn't look at him. I listened. I took notes. I learned that the North Sector project was worth $200,000. I learned that the initial draw, a check for $40,000, was scheduled to be cut next Tuesday. And I learned that Crestline had certified they had 0 outstanding judgments and fully owned their equipment fleet. Every word was a lie. When the meeting ended, the contractors filed out. Travis lunged for me, grabbing my elbow. "You are dead," he whispered, his grip painful. "You have no idea what you just did. Mom is going to—" "Mr. Murphy?" Mason Keir's voice cut through the air. "I need a moment with your sister, regarding the compliance file." Travis froze. He looked at Mason, then at me. He let go of my arm. "Fine," he spat. "Fix it, Gabby, or do not bother coming home." He stormed out. Mason Keir waited until the door clicked shut. Then he sat down on the edge of the table and looked at me. He wasn't the dry bureaucrat I had assumed. His eyes were kind, but guarded. "Ms. Murphy," he said, "I'm going to speak to you off the record. Because if I speak to you on the record, I have to call the district attorney." I swallowed hard. "Okay." He opened the Crestline folder. It was thick. "I have been doing this for 15 years, he said. "I know what a family business looks like. It is usually messy, but this file is not messy. It is contradictory." He spread 3 documents out on the table. "This is the bond application, signed by Gabriella Murphy. This is the fleet ownership affidavit, signed by Gabriella Murphy. And this is the vendor guarantee for the heavy equipment rental, signed by Gabriella Murphy." He pointed to the signatures. "Do you see the problem?" he asked. I looked. They all looked like my name. They all had the loop, the slant. Mason said, "On the bond application, the one you presumably didn't sign because it was notarized by a man named Miller who runs a towing company, the slant is 10 degrees to the right. On the fleet affidavit, the pen pressure is heavy at the top of the letters. On the guarantee, it looks like it was traced." He looked at me, and then there is the address. He said, "The bond lists your address as 104 Maple Street. The fleet form lists a P.O. box in Ridley. The guarantee lists an apartment on 4th Avenue. He closed the folder. "I cannot give you legal advice, Ms. Murphy, but I can tell you that next week, this file goes to the state for final underwriting. Once the state stamps it, any falsehood in these pages becomes a felony. Not just for the person who signed it, but for the person named." He leaned forward. "If this were my name," he said softly, "I would not let this file leave this room without a contest." I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but my head was clear. "Thank you, Mr. Mason," I said. "I think I need to make some phone calls." "Protect yourself." "Gabriella," he said, "because the state does not care about family dynamics. They only care about signatures." I walked out of the building. Travis was gone. My phone was buzzing with 12 missed calls from Lorraine. I sat in my truck, my beautiful, battered truck, and opened the folder I had stolen from the office the day before. I looked at the billing records. There it was. Invoice number 402. Rental of 20-foot equipment trailer. Flatbed. Billed to the city for $2,000 a month. But there was no rental agreement, because the trailer was the one my father had owned, the one that had disappeared. They were billing the city for renting their own stolen property, and at the bottom of the invoice, approved by Lorraine Murphy, administrator. She wasn't just a passive beneficiary, she was the architect. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a notification from the extended family group chat, a chat I had muted years ago but never left. Aunt Lorraine created a new group, Family Prayer Circle. I clicked on it. There were 30 people in the chat, cousins, aunts, uncles. Lorraine had posted a message. "Please pray for Gabriella. She is having a mental health crisis. We think it might be a delayed postpartum hormonal imbalance or perhaps something substance-related. She showed up at Travis's work today screaming and making threats. She is confused and dangerous. If she contacts you asking for money or telling wild stories, please just tell her you love her and call me. We are trying to get her into a facility." I stared at the screen. The air left my lungs. Postpartum? I didn't have a child. I had never been pregnant. It was a lie so specific, so medically invasive, that it painted me as hysterical and broken. Then the replies started rolling in. "Oh my God. Poor Gabby. Praying. Is she safe? Do not let her drive. Travis said she stole a truck? Is that true?" They were rewriting me. In real time, they were taking my righteous anger and turning it into a symptom of insanity. If I fought back now, I would just look like the crazy woman they described. I felt a sob build in my throat, hot and choking. It was a violation deeper than the money. They were stealing my reality. Then, a text came through that wasn't in the group chat. It was from a number I didn't have saved. Gabby, it is Aunt Colleen. I saw the group chat. I know Lorraine is lying. She did the same thing to me when I refused to lie for Travis 10 years ago. I have something for you. Can you come to my house? Colleen, my father's younger sister. The one who had drifted away after the funeral, the one Lorraine called bitter. I wiped my eyes. I put the truck in gear. Colleen lived in a small, neat bungalow on the other side of the river. She was waiting on the porch when I pulled up. She looked like my father. The same square jaw, the same kind eyes. She didn't hug me. She just opened the screen door and nodded. Come in, she said. I made tea. We sat in her kitchen. On the table was a cardboard box, taped shut with yellowing masking tape. Your dad gave me this, Colleen said, resting her hand on the lid. 2 weeks before he died. He came over late at night. He looked haunted. He made me promise not to tell Lorraine I had it. He said, if anything happens, if they ever try to cut Gabriella out or drag her in, give her the box. Why didn't you give it to me sooner? I asked. Colleen looked down. Because I was a coward, and because Lorraine told me you wanted nothing to do with us. She said you blamed the family for his death. I believed her. Until I saw that text today about you being postpartum, that is when I knew she was cornered. Lorraine only lies that big when she is terrified. She pushed the box toward me. It is yours. Gabby, I cut the tape with my house key. The smell of old paper and my father's tobacco smoke drifted out. Inside were files, manila folders labeled in his blocky, all caps handwriting, equipment titles, lease agreements, life insurance, and right on top, a note on a piece of legal pad paper. Gabby, if you are reading this, I am gone. And if you are reading this, it means Lorraine and Travis have not changed. I love them, but they are drowning, and they will pull you down to stay afloat. Do not let them trust paperwork, not people. I hid the clean assets. Check the box. I picked up the file marked inventory. It was a list. 24-foot flatbed trailer. VIN ending in 449. Storage lot lease. Ridley Industrial Park. Safe deposit box. Number 402. Bridgeton Community Credit Union. I froze. Box 402. The invoice for the trailer rental. The invoice number was 402. Travis must have seen the number somewhere and used it subconsciously. But the box, a safe deposit box. Did Lorraine know about it? I looked at the note again. I hid the clean assets. If Lorraine knew, she would have emptied it. She was the executor. She had access to everything, unless she didn't know it existed. I looked at Colleen. Did he have a key? I asked. Colleen reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, flat key on a ring. He gave me this, she said. He said, give it to Gabby when she is ready to fight. I stood up. I grabbed the box. Thank you. Colleen, go, she said. And Gabby? Burn them down. I drove to Bridgeton Community Credit Union. It was 3 p.m. I walked in with the box under my arm, Colleen's key in my hand, and a copy of my father's death certificate that I had carried in my glove box for 4 years. I went to the safe deposit counter. The clerk was new. She didn't know me. She didn't know my mother. I need to access box 402. I said, I am the successor. She checked the computer. The box is listed under Michael Murphy, she said, with a successor beneficiary listed as Gabriella Murphy. She looked at my ID. She looked at the death certificate. Okay. Ms. Murphy, do you have the key? I held it up. She led me into the vault. It was cool and quiet, a sanctuary of steel. She unlocked her side. I unlocked mine. The long metal drawer slid out. I carried it to a private room. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped it. I opened the lid. It wasn't full of cash. It wasn't full of gold. It was full of paper. There were cashier's checks, a stack of them, each one made out to Gabriella Murphy. $5,000, $3,000, $2,000. I counted them. $50,000 in total, dated over the last 2 years of his life, and under the checks, a letter in a sealed envelope marked simply, G. I opened it. My dearest girl, I am sorry. I am sorry I was weak. I let Lorraine run the books because I wanted peace, and by the time I realized what she was doing, we were in too deep. She and Travis have been taking loans against the business for years to pay for cars, vacations, things we didn't need. They think the business is a magic well. I have been siphoning off the profit from the side jobs, the ones I did on weekends without Travis. I turned it into cashier's checks in your name. This is yours. It is clean. It is the only thing I have left to give you that does not have debt attached to it. I know they will try to use you. You are the only one with a good heart and a clean name. Do not let them. Take this money. Leave Briar Glen. Build your own life. You were always the smart one. Love, Dad. I sat in that small, silent room and wept. I cried until my chest ached. I cried not for the money, though $50,000 was life-changing, but for the validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't postpartum. I was the only one he trusted. I wiped my face. I put the checks in my purse. I put the letter in my pocket. Then I walked out to the lobby. I need to speak to the fraud department. I said to the manager, and I need a notary. For the next 2 hours, I went to war. I filed a formal affidavit of identity theft regarding the line of credit. I attached the statement from the print shop clerk. I attached the metadata report. I filed a dispute on the unauthorized guarantee held by the vendor. I placed a complete freeze on my credit with all 3 bureaus. Then, I did the hardest thing. I went to a copy shop. I made copies of the conflicting documents Mason Keir had shown me. The bond application, the fleet affidavit, the guarantee. I made copies of my father's letter. I made copies of the cashier's checks proving the assets were mine, not the estate's. I put them in a large envelope. I addressed it to Mason Keir, Compliance Officer, Ridgehaven Municipal Facilities. I drove to the post office. I sent it, certified mail. Return receipt requested. The moment that envelope dropped into the slot, I knew I had crossed the Rubicon. I had just handed the state the evidence they needed to indict my mother and brother for fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. I wasn't saving the family. I was amputating the gangrene. I drove back to my apartment. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. I pulled into the parking lot. My spot was empty, of course. I parked the truck in a visitor spot far away from the light. As I got out, a car pulled up behind me, blocking me in. It was the white dually. Travis jumped out before the truck even stopped moving. He left the door open, the engine idling like a growling beast. He looked unhinged. His hair was wild, his eyes bloodshot. He had been drinking. I could smell it from 10 feet away. "You bitch," he screamed. He marched toward me, his boots slamming against the pavement. Mason called me. He said you disputed the bond. He said the state is pulling the file for review. I stood my ground. I leaned against the door of my truck, feeling the cold metal against my back. I told you, Travis, I am not the guarantor. "You killed us," he shouted, stopping inches from my face. Spittle flew from his lips. "Do you understand? If we lose this contract, the creditors come for the house, Mom will be on the street, I will go to jail." "You should have thought of that before you signed my name," I said quietly. He slammed his fist into the side of my truck. The metal dented with a sickening crunch. "I warned you," he hissed. "We are family. We protect each other." "No," I said. "You protect yourselves. You used me as a shield, Travis, and now I am putting the shield down." He stared at me, his chest heaving. He looked at the dent he had just put in my truck. He looked at my face, which was dry and cold and absolutely done. "If you take this from us," he whispered, his voice shaking with a terrifying mix of rage and fear, "if you do this, you will have nobody left No mom, no brother. You will be an orphan. Gabby, you will have nothing. I touched the pocket where my father's letter sat. I felt the sharp corner of the envelope. I looked him in the eye. I already don't. I said. Travis stared at me for a long second. Then he spat on the ground at my feet. Watch your back. Gabby, he said. Accidents happen. He got back in his truck and peeled out. Tires screeching, leaving a cloud of blue smoke that smelled of burnt rubber and ruin. I watched him go. Then I got back in my truck, locked the doors, and drove. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. The war was over. The nukes had been launched. Now, I just had to survive the fallout. The fallout from the Ridgehaven suspension was immediate, but it did not hit with a bang. It hit with a suffocating silence. For 2 days, my phone did not ring. No texts from Travis. No calls from Lorraine. It was the silence of a tide pulling back before a tsunami. I went to work at the logistics center. Keeping my head down, I processed shipping manifestos, checked inventory, and tried to pretend that I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. My coworkers, who usually chatted about weekend plans and sports scores, sensed my tension and gave me a wide berth. On Wednesday morning, the silence broke. I was on the warehouse floor, clipboard in hand, verifying a pallet of automotive parts, when the double doors at the front of the facility swung open. The warehouse was a cavernous space, filled with the hum of conveyor belts and the beep of forklifts, but the sound of my mother's voice cut through it like a circular saw. "I need to speak to her," Lorraine screamed. "Do not touch me." I froze. I looked toward the front office, through the glass partition. I saw Lorraine pushing past the receptionist. She was not wearing her usual polished real estate blazer. She was wearing a tracksuit, her hair messy, her face blotchy and red. She looked like a woman on the edge of a breakdown, which was exactly what she wanted to look like. She spotted me through the glass. "Gabriella," she shrieked. She burst onto the warehouse floor. My manager, a patient man named Gary, tried to step in front of her. "Ma'am, you cannot be back here. This is a restricted area." She shoved him. It wasn't a hard shove, but it was enough to make him stumble. "That is my daughter," she yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. "That is the girl who is destroying this family." Every head turned. The forklifts stopped. The conveyor belts seemed to hum quieter. 40 people, people I ate lunch with, people I respected, were staring at me. I walked toward her, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had to get her out. "Mom, stop," I said, keeping my voice low. "We are going outside." "Stop?" she laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "You want me to stop? You stopped us. Gabriella, you stopped everything. Do you know what you did? Do you know what they are saying about your brother?" She grabbed my arm. Her grip was iron. "You are a thief," she hissed, loud enough for Gary to hear. "You stole our future because you are jealous. You have always been jealous of Travis. You have always been broken. Let go of me." I said, "I will tell them," she threatened, leaning in close, her breath smelling of peppermint and panic. "I will tell everyone what you really are." She didn't say what that was. She never did. That was her genius. She left the accusation hanging in the air, a shapeless monster that everyone could fill with their own worst imagination. Was I a drug addict? An embezzler? A sociopath? The vagueness was the weapon. Gary stepped in, his voice firm. "Ma'am, I am calling the police. You need to leave, now." Lorraine looked at him, then at me. She released my arm with a disgusted shove. "I am leaving." She spat. "I do not want to be near her anyway. She is poison." She turned and marched out, sobbing loudly into her hands as she exited the building. The performance was flawless. I stood there, feeling the heat of 40 pairs of eyes on my skin. I felt naked. I felt dirty. "Take the rest of the day." "Gabby," Gary said quietly. He didn't make eye contact. I drove straight to Elena Ward's office. I didn't have an appointment, but her receptionist saw my shaking hands and waved me back. I sat in Elena's leather chair and told her everything, the scene, the accusations, the humiliation. Elena listened, her face grim. She didn't look surprised. "This is the extinction burst," she said. "The what?" "In behavioral psychology. When you stop reinforcing a behavior, it gets worse before it stops," she explained. "You cut off their supply, their money, their legitimacy. They are panicking, and because they cannot attack you legally yet, they are attacking you socially. They want you to break. They want you to beg them to stop so you will sign whatever they put in front of you." She leaned forward. "Gabriella, you need to listen to me. This is going to get worse. Family members who commit fraud do not just scream, they manufacture emergencies." "What kind of emergencies?" "Financial ones," Elena said. "They will try to create a crisis that only they can solve, or a crisis that forces you to come to the table. Watch your assets. Watch your car. Watch everything." I thought about the truck. It was parked outside. I had checked the locks 3 times. "They can't touch the truck," I said. "I have the title. I have the keys. Possession is 9/10 of the law," Elena said. "But confusion is the other 10th. Be careful." Elena was right. 2 days later, I walked out of my apartment at 6 in the morning to go to work. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. A flatbed tow truck was backed up to my parking spot. A man in a neon vest was hooking chains to the front axle of my pickup. "Hey!" I screamed, dropping my coffee. I ran across the parking lot, my boots skidding on the asphalt. "Hey! Stop!" The driver looked up. He was a big man with a beard, looking tired. "Step back, lady," he said. "That is my truck," I yelled. "Put it down." "I have a repo order," he said, not pausing. "Bank requested it. Missed payments." "That is a lie," I shouted. I pulled out my phone. "I have the app right here. I am current. I made a payment last week." The driver stopped cranking the winch. He looked at me, then at the clipboard in his hand. "Bank says 3 months delinquent," he said. "Notices were sent. No response. Default judgment entered." "Notices sent where?" I demanded. "Where were they sent?" He looked at the paper. 104 Maple Street. My blood ran cold. "That is not my address," I said, my voice shaking. "That is my mother's house. She changed the address. She intercepted the bills. I don't know about that." The driver said, "I just have the order." I scrambled to open my banking app. My fingers were trembling so hard I kept typing the wrong password. Finally, I got in. I pulled up the payment history. "Look," I pleaded, shoving the phone in his face. "Look, autopay, drafted on the 1st of every month. September, October, November, it is all there. There is no delinquency." The driver squinted at the screen. He saw the green check marks next to the payments. He looked at his clipboard, then he looked at the truck. "Someone messed up," he muttered. "Please," I said, "if you take this truck, I lose my job. I lose everything. This is fraud. Please." He hesitated. In that moment, my entire life hung on the empathy of a man named Ray. He unhooked the chain. "You better call your bank," he said. "If I get another order tomorrow, I am taking it." "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you." I waited until he drove away. Then I sat on the curb and vomited. They had changed my mailing address on the loan. They had likely called in a stop payment on the auto draft, or diverted the statements so I wouldn't see the late fees stacking up until it was too late. They wanted me on foot. They wanted me helpless. I spent the next 3 hours on the phone with the finance company. I had to email them copies of my lease, my driver's license, and a utility bill to prove my address. I set up a verbal password on the account, Antarctica, so no one could change the details without it. But the fear didn't leave. The truck wasn't just a vehicle anymore. It was a target. That afternoon, I met Colleen for lunch. We went to a diner 3 towns over, afraid that someone from Briar Glen would see us. Colleen looked tired. She stirred her tea, watching the liquid swirl. Lorraine called me. She said, I stiffened. What did she say? She wanted to know if I had seen you. She said you were off your meds. She asked if I had given you that box of trash Dad left. What did you tell her? I told her I burned it years ago, Colleen said. She believed me, because she cannot imagine anyone keeping something that doesn't have immediate value. Colleen took a sip of tea. You need to know something. Gabby, this isn't the first time she has done this. What do you mean? 10 years ago, right after Travis got his first DUI, Lorraine came to me. She had a stack of papers. She wanted me to sign an affidavit saying I was driving the car. She said Travis couldn't lose his license because he was the future of the company. You refused? Of course I refused, Colleen said, and the next day, Lorraine called my boss. I was working as a secretary at a law firm. She told him I was stealing office supplies. She told him I was drinking at my desk. I stared at her. She tried to get you fired? She succeeded. Colleen said, I lost that job. It took me 2 years to get back on my feet. That is how she works. It is a loyalty test. If you sign, you are owned. If you don't sign, you are an enemy, and enemies must be destroyed. It is a cult, I said softly. It is a business, Colleen corrected. And you are bad for the bottom line. I needed more than stories. I needed a witness. I texted Dahlia. Meet me at the park, the one by the river. Please, they are going to pin this on you if you don't talk. It took an hour for her to reply. 5 p.m. I waited on a bench near the duck pond. The wind was biting, carrying the scent of dead leaves and coming winter. Dahlia arrived wearing a heavy coat and sunglasses, looking over her shoulder every few steps. She sat down, leaving a foot of space between us. I can't be here, she whispered. Travis is tearing the office apart. He is shredding everything. Let him shred. I said, the digital footprint is already there. Dahlia looked at me, her lower lip trembling. I am scared. Gabby, I have kids. If I go to jail, you won't go to jail if you cooperate. I said, but you have to tell me the truth. Did you create the accounts? Dahlia nodded, tears slipping out from under her sunglasses. Travis made me. He said we needed pass-through accounts to hide the cash flow problems from the bonding agency. He told me to open vendor accounts in your name, Timberline, Valley Rentals, and the credit line. That was Lorraine, Dahlia said. She said you wouldn't mind, she said. She took a breath. She said, Gabriella won't fight us. She never does. She just wants to be loved. The words hit me like a physical blow. She just wants to be loved. They had weaponized my own desire for connection. They knew I was lonely, so they assumed I was weak. Will you write that down? I asked. Will you sign a statement? Dahlia hesitated. If you don't, I said, I have to give the police your name as the person who filed the applications. My lawyer is drafting the complaint tomorrow. Dahlia closed her eyes. Okay, I will write it, but you have to keep me out of it until the end. I promise. She pulled a notepad out of her purse and began to write. The next morning, I had a follow-up meeting with Mason Keir. I brought Dahlia's statement, though I didn't show it to him yet. I wanted to know what Ridgehaven had found. Mason looked different this time, less like a bureaucrat, more like a prosecutor. We finished the preliminary audit, he said, closing the door. And? It is worse than we thought, he said. It is not just the bonds. We checked the insurance certificate Crestline submitted. The policy number? It belongs to a bakery in Cincinnati. They photoshopped the numbers. I felt sick. That meant if an accident had happened on the job site, if a worker had been hurt, there would have been no coverage. And the employee roster? Mason continued. Half the names are made up. They listed people who don't exist to meet the minimum crew requirements. This is not a family dispute anymore. Ms. Murphy, this is grand larceny. This is fraud against a municipality. What happens now? I have referred the file to the State Attorney General's office. Mason said, they are opening a criminal probe. It will take time, weeks, maybe months, to build the case. But when they come, they will come heavy. He looked at me. You need to distance yourself, completely. If your name is on anything else, you are going down with the ship. I already disputed the signature. I said, good, keep doing that. And Gabriella, yes, get out of town. When the subpoenas drop, You do not want to be within driving distance of your brother. I walked out of the municipal building and saw a familiar car parked at the curb. It was Lorraine's Mercedes. She rolled down the window. She wasn't screaming this time. She looked calm, composed. The mask was back on. "Get in, Gabriella," she said. I stood on the sidewalk. "No, please, we need to talk. No yelling, just business." I hesitated, then walked to the window. I didn't get in. "Say what you have to say." Lorraine sighed, picking at a piece of lint on her skirt. "Travis is willing to make a deal," she said. "A deal?" I laughed. "You are being investigated by the Attorney General." "Mom, there are no deals." Lorraine's eyes flickered, but she kept her voice smooth. "We can fix the investigation. We just need to clarify the paperwork. If you sign an affidavit stating that you did authorize the use of your name as a silent partner, we can make this go away." "And why would I do that?" "Because we will pay off the credit line," she said, "immediately, and we will give you 10% of the Ridgehaven profit. That is $20,000, Gabriella. Plus, we will fix your truck." I stared at her. She was trying to bribe me with my own stolen credit and a fraction of the money she planned to steal. "And in exchange?" I asked. "In exchange," she said, "you agree to be listed as the chief financial officer. Just on paper. It satisfies the bond requirements. You won't have to do anything. Just sign." I looked at her. I saw the desperation behind the makeup. She needed a scapegoat. If I signed on as CFO and the fraud was discovered, guess who would go to jail? The person in charge of the finances. The person who authorized everything. "You want me to be the fall guy." I said, "I want you to be family," she snapped, her composure cracking. "I am offering you a way out. I am offering you a seat at the table. It is a seat in an electric chair, Mom." I stepped back from the car. "No deal." Lorraine's face hardened into a mask of pure hatred. "You will regret this," she said. "We offered you an olive branch. Now you get the sword." She rolled up the window and drove away. I went home and started digging. If they wanted me to be the CFO, there had to be more buried in the finances than just the fake insurance. I pulled out the files Dahlia had mentioned, the pass-through accounts, Timberline Supply Exchange. It sounded like a legitimate vendor. I searched the business registry. The registered agent was Travis Murphy. The business address was... I zoomed in on the map. It was the print spot, the same strip mall copy shop where Lorraine had forged the credit application. There was no Timberline Supply. It was a mailbox. I looked at the invoices I had photographed in the Crestline office. Crestline paid Timberline $5,000 a month for materials. It was a laundering scheme. They were taking loan money, money from the bank, money from the city, paying it to a fake company, and then, presumably, moving it into their personal accounts. It was simple, it was stupid, and it was undeniable. I printed everything. I added it to the file for Mason Keir. Then, I looked around my apartment. I had lived here for 3 years. I had painted the walls. I had bought the furniture, but now, every shadow felt like it held a threat. Every time a car drove by, I flinched. I couldn't live like this. Waiting for the repo man, waiting for the police, waiting for Travis to get drunk enough to do something worse than dent my truck. I made a decision. I listed my couch, my dining table, and my bed on Facebook Marketplace. Must go today. Cash only. By 6 p.m., my apartment was empty. I had $800 in my pocket. I packed my clothes into trash bags. I packed my kitchen supplies into a plastic tote. I packed the box for my father. I called my landlord. "I am breaking the lease," I said. "Keep the deposit. I am out." He argued, but I didn't listen. I left the keys on the counter. I carried the last bag down to my truck. It was dark. The parking lot lights were humming. The truck looked rough. The bumper was caved in. The paint was scratched. The bed still had concrete dust in the corners. But it started. The engine turned over with a reliable, throaty growl. It was the only thing I owned, and it was enough. I climbed into the driver's seat. I locked the doors. I wedged the steering wheel lock, a new one, into place. Just in case. I was going to sleep in a rest stop tonight. Tomorrow, I would drive, maybe to the coast, maybe to the mountains, anywhere that wasn't Briar Glen. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. A voicemail. It was a number I didn't recognize. A local landline. I pressed play. Ms. Murphy, this is Richard Pike from Harrow Pike Legal Group. We are retaining counsel for Crestline Property Services. We are calling to notify you that a civil complaint has been filed against you in the Court of Common Pleas. I felt a cold hand squeeze my heart. Your brother, Mr. Travis Murphy, and your mother, Ms. Lorraine Murphy, are suing you for tortious interference with business expectancy and breach of fiduciary duty. The complaint alleges that you, as a silent partner, went rogue and intentionally sabotaged the Ridgehaven contract to cause financial harm to the company. We are seeking damages in the amount of $250,000. You will be served shortly. I lowered the phone. They weren't just fighting back. They were rewriting history again. They were painting me as the villain, the rogue partner, the saboteur. They were suing me for the money they had failed to steal. I looked at the empty apartment building. I looked at the dark road ahead. Let them sue. I whispered to the empty cab. I put the truck in drive. I didn't look back at the spot where I had lived. I pulled out of the complex, turning onto the main road, heading toward the highway. They wanted a war? They had one. But this time, I wasn't fighting from the inside. I was fighting from the high ground. And I had $50,000 of clean money, a stack of evidence, and a full tank of gas. I merged onto the interstate. The city lights of Briar Glen faded in my rearview mirror, shrinking until they were nothing but distant, glittering lies. I drove into the dark, and for the first time in my life, the darkness didn't feel scary. It felt like room to breathe. The fluorescent lights of the county courthouse hummed with a sound that felt like a headache taking physical form. I sat at the defendant's table, my hands clasped on top of the scarred wood, watching my mother perform the role of a lifetime. Lorraine sat in the witness stand, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. She was dressed in a soft beige cardigan that made her look smaller, frailer than she actually was. She looked like a grandmother who baked cookies, not a woman who had forged her dead husband's signature to hide assets. Gabriella has always been confused. Lorraine told the judge, her voice trembling just enough to register as heartbreak. She has had a hard few years, the breakup, the financial instability. We tried to help her. We brought her into the business to give her purpose. And this claim that she was a silent partner? The Crestline attorney asked. She wanted to be involved, Lorraine said, looking at me with sad, pitying eyes. She begged us to let her help. But she didn't understand the pressure. When the Ridgehaven contract got complicated, she snapped. She started listening to outsiders who put paranoid ideas in her head. She is trying to hurt us because she is hurting. Your Honor, I stared at her. It was masterful. She wasn't angry. She was disappointed. She was painting me as the prodigal daughter returning to burn down the house out of spite. Travis was next. He marched to the stand with a binder under his arm. He looked serious, responsible, a man trying to save his family legacy from a hysterical sister. We have minutes from the meetings, Travis said, opening the binder, right here. January 12th, Gabriella Murphy approved the purchase of the fleet vehicles. February 4th, Gabriella Murphy authorized the opening of the credit line at Bridgeton. He held up sheets of paper. They looked official. They had letterheads. They had signatures. My attorney, Elena Ward, stood up. She didn't look impressed. She walked to the podium with a calm, predatory grace. Mr. Murphy, she said, you claim my client signed this authorization on January 12th? Yes. Travis said, in our office? And you witnessed it? I did. Elena picked up a piece of paper from her own stack. That is interesting, she said, because I have a credit card receipt and a flight manifest that places Gabriella Murphy in Denver, Colorado, on January 12th for a logistics conference. Unless she has the ability to teleport, she could not have been in your office signing this document. Travis blinked. His confidence faltered for a fraction of a second. Maybe she signed it before she left, he stammered. The date might be when I filed it. Elena picked up another paper. And this vendor guarantee for Valley Rentals? Dated August 14th, 2021? Yes, Travis said, his jaw tightening. On August 14th, 2021, Gabriella Murphy was hospitalized for an appendectomy at Mercy General. Elena said, We have the admission records. She was under general anesthesia at 2 in the afternoon, which is when this document was notarized. The courtroom was silent. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, leaned forward. Let me see those documents. Mr. Murphy, the judge said. Travis handed them over. His hand was shaking. Elena called our witness, Dahlia Vance. Dahlia walked to the stand looking like she was walking to the gallows. She refused to look at Travis or Lorraine. She kept her eyes on her hands, which were twisting a handkerchief into a tight knot. Ms. Vance, Elena said gently, you were the bookkeeper for Crestline Property Services. Yes, Dahlia whispered. Can you explain how Gabriella's signature appeared on these documents? Travis stood up. Objection. She is a disgruntled employee. Sit down. Mr. Murphy, the judge snapped. Proceed. Ms. Vance? Dahlia took a breath. Her voice was thin, shaking, but clear. Travis, Mr. Murphy told me to keep a file. He called it the Gabriella file. He instructed me to print out the signature pages from the boilerplate contracts. He told me to have Gabriella sign them whenever she came by, saying they were just standard liability waivers for being on the property. And then he told me to scan her signature. Dahlia said, he had a program. He could paste it onto any document he wanted. And did Mrs. Murphy know about this? Elena asked. Dahlia finally looked up. She looked at Lorraine. Lorraine was staring back with a gaze so cold it could have frozen the air in the room. It was a look of pure, concentrated venom. Yes, Dahlia said. Lorraine brought in the tax forms herself. She stood over my shoulder while I photoshopped the dates. She said Gabriella wouldn't mind because it was all for the family inheritance anyway. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Lorraine didn't flinch. She just adjusted her cardigan. The hearing ended an hour later. The judge did not issue a verdict on the spot regarding the lawsuit damages, but she did make a ruling on the injunction. The court finds sufficient evidence to question the validity of the plaintiff's documents. The judge said, the request for a restraining order against the defendant is denied. Furthermore, due to the testimony regarding forgery, I am referring the evidentiary record to the district attorney's office for review. She slammed the gavel. It wasn't a criminal conviction, not yet, but it was the first domino. I walked out of the courtroom feeling lightheaded. I had expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. In the hallway, the ambush was waiting. It wasn't just Travis and Lorraine. It was my Aunt Linda, my cousin Sarah, my Uncle Sal. They had packed the benches behind us. A silent Greek chorus of judgment. Now, they surrounded me. Gabriella, Aunt Linda said, grabbing my arm. What have you done? I pulled my arm away. I told the truth. You humiliated your mother, Sarah cried. Did you see her face? The judge is sending the police after them. They forged my signature. Sarah, I said, they stole my identity. They were trying to save the business, Uncle Sal shouted. That business put food on your table for 20 years. You don't call the cops on family. You fix it in-house. Fix it? I laughed. A harsh sound. There is no fixing this. You need to go back in there, Linda demanded. You need to tell the judge you lied. Tell them you were confused. If Travis goes to jail, who takes care of the contracts? Who takes care of Lorraine? They weren't angry because I was wrong. They were terrified. They were scared that the ATM was about to break. They were scared that the Crestline gravy train, which had employed half the family at one point or another, was about to derail. They didn't care about me. They cared about the ecosystem. I looked at them. People I had spent every Christmas with. People whose birthdays I had memorized. They looked like strangers. I have nothing to say to any of you. I said. I pushed through them. They shouted after me, calling me selfish, calling me ungrateful, calling me a traitor. I kept walking. Near the exit, a hand touched my shoulder. I flinched, spinning around, ready to fight. It was Colleen. She held up her hands. "It is just me, Gabby," I exhaled. "I am leaving." "Colleen, I can't be here." "I know," she said. "But before you go, I found something else. In the box." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse. "I was looking through the old bank statements your dad kept," she said. "He wrote notes in the margins." She handed me the paper. It was a photocopy of a bank statement from Bridgeton Community Credit Union, dated 5 years ago. Circled in red pen was a series of transfers, and next to them, in my father's handwriting, "How are they getting approval? L doesn't have the credit score." Someone inside is rubber stamping, and then a name scrawled next to it. "Keegan?" "Keegan?" I asked. I looked it up. Colleen said, "There is a vice president of lending at Bridgeton named Patrick Keegan. He is Lorraine's second cousin on her mother's side." I stared at the paper. The representative at the bank told me the security questions were answered correctly. She said the system verified me. "If Keegan is involved," Colleen said, "he could have bypassed the security questions. He could have overridden the address mismatch." "Gabby, this isn't just Lorraine and Travis playing pretend. This is bank fraud with an insider. That is federal." I felt a chill go down my spine. This was why the loans were so easy. This was why they were so confident. They had the bank rigged. "Take this to Mason Keir," Colleen said, "and then get in your truck and drive. Because if Keegan goes down, he will not go down quietly." I hugged her. It was a fierce, desperate hug. "Thank you, Aunt Colleen." She squeezed my hand. "You look like your father. He would be proud." I walked out to the parking lot. My truck was there, looking sturdy and safe amidst the sea of sedans. I had a voicemail. It was from Mason Keir. "Ms. Murphy, the audit has expanded. Based on the documents you sent, the municipality is freezing all payments to Crestline. We are also bringing in a forensic accountant. We need you to come in tomorrow for a formal deposition. The state police may want to speak with you as well. Please call me." I stared at the phone. If I stayed to testify, I would be stuck here for months. Depositions, grand juries, trial prep. I would be living in the blast radius of my family's destruction. Travis knew where I parked. Lorraine knew my social security number. I didn't want to be the star witness. I just wanted to be free. I was unlocking my truck when a shadow fell over me. Gabriella. It was Lorraine. She was alone. The entourage was gone. She looked tired. The stage makeup looked heavy in the harsh daylight. She leaned against the car parked next to mine. "Are you happy?" she asked. "No, Mom, I am not happy. You think I am a monster," she said. It wasn't an apology. It was a statement. "I think you are a thief," I said. "I did what I had to do," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "When your father died, we had nothing. He left us with debt. Gabriella, he was too soft. He let people walk all over him. I promised myself I wouldn't lose the house. I wouldn't lose the status. So you stole from me? Because you could take it," she said, her eyes flashing with a sudden, twisted intensity. "You were always the strong one. Travis is weak. He needs help. He needs guidance. You always land on your feet. I knew that if I used your credit, you would just fix it. You would work harder. You would survive." I stared at her. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. She had cannibalized me because she respected my resilience. She had punished me for being capable. "That is your justification?" I asked. "You hurt me because I was strong?" "I did it for the family," she said, "and you are part of the family. Or you were." She reached out, as if to touch my arm. "We can still fix this," she said. "If you refuse to testify, if you leave town and let the investigation stall, Keegan can smooth things over at the bank. We can start over." I looked at her hand, I looked at her face, and I felt something inside me break. It wasn't a loud break, it wasn't a scream. It was the quiet snap of a tether finally giving way. I didn't hate her, I didn't love her, I just didn't need her. "I am not coming back." "Mom," I said. "Gabriella, I am not signing anything. I am not lying for you, and I am not coming to Christmas dinner to pretend we are fine." She stiffened. "You are walking away from your mother?" "I am walking away from a criminal enterprise," I said. I opened the truck door and climbed in. "You will have nothing," she yelled, her voice cracking. "You will be alone." I started the engine. I looked at her through the glass one last time. She looked small. She looked terrified. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't wave. I put the truck in reverse and backed out. I drove out of the courthouse parking lot. I drove past the grocery store where I used to shop. I drove past the apartment complex where I had lived. I merged onto the highway. I didn't go to my apartment. It was already empty. I didn't go to the bank. I drove toward the coast. I had a destination in mind. Larkhaven Bay. I had seen pictures of it once, a small town on the ocean where the air smelled like salt, and nobody knew the name Murphy. I drove for hours. The sun began to set, turning the Ohio sky into a bruised purple. I turned off my phone. Then, I rolled down the window and threw it out. It bounced on the asphalt behind me, shattering. I didn't need it. I had the numbers I needed written in a notebook in the passenger seat. Elena, Colleen, Marin, everyone else was gone. As the miles ticked by, the silence in the cab felt heavy. I thought about Travis, drinking himself into a rage. I thought about Lorraine, spinning her web of lies to anyone who would listen, and then I started to cry. It wasn't a pretty cry. It was ugly, heaving sobs that shook my chest. I cried for the mother I wanted but never had. I cried for the brother who should have protected me. I cried for the 10 years I had spent trying to earn their approval, only to realize the price of admission was my soul. I drove through the night. The tears dried, leaving my face tight and salty. The landscape changed. The flat plains gave way to rolling hills. The air coming through the vents started to change, carrying the faint, crisp scent of moisture. Dawn broke as I crossed the state line. The sky turned a pale, washed-out blue. I pulled into a rest area. My body ached. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand. I parked the truck in the corner of the lot, away from the semis. I turned off the engine. The silence was absolute. I reached into the glove box and pulled out the envelope my father had left me. I opened it. I took out the stack of cashier's checks, $50,000. I held them in my hand. They were just paper, but they were proof. Proof that he had seen me. Proof that I wasn't the crazy one. I looked at the letter again. Trust paperwork, not people. I had a choice. I could go to Larkhaven Bay, cash these checks, and disappear. I could let Mason Keir and the Attorney General handle my family. They had enough evidence. They didn't really need me, or I could call Mason from a payphone. I could tell him about Keegan. I could burn the whole thing down to the bedrock. I looked out the windshield. The sun was cresting over the trees, blindingly bright. I put the checks back in the envelope. I put the envelope in my jacket pocket. I started the truck. I pulled back onto the highway. The road was empty, stretching out into the morning light. I checked my rearview mirror. In the distance, about a quarter-mile back, a black SUV pulled onto the highway from the rest area ramp. It stayed in the right lane. It didn't speed up. It didn't slow down. It matched my pace. Was it an investigator? Was it Travis? Was it just a stranger driving to work? My heart kicked against my ribs. The old fear, the reflex to panic, flared up. But then I looked at the steering wheel. My hands were steady. This was my truck. This was my gas. This was my direction. I pressed the accelerator. The truck surged forward, the engine roaring a defiant note. I didn't know who was behind me. I didn't know if they would ever stop following me. But for the first time in 33 years, I wasn't looking for permission to drive. I kept my eyes on the horizon, and I didn't lift my foot. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed the journey of Gabriella and her fight for freedom. I would love to hear from you. Where are you listening from today? Please leave a comment below and share your thoughts on the ending. Do you think Gabriella should disappear, or should she turn around and fight? If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of betrayal and justice. Your support means the world to me. Stay safe, and remember, Always read the fine print.